Hey, what's up? This is Jason Drone. Welcome to today's episode of GSD Daily, episode number 74. So today in our, this is failures and fuck ups week. So basically we've been talking, or I have been sharing some of my biggest failures, missteps in the 14 years that I've been in business and how they have impacted and maybe, shifted the way we do things now, so it was funny. My wife just walked by as I'm looking through books, trying to find some inspiration of what I'm going to talk about today, because so many of the books that I've read in the past they've informed what I do now, or the way that I think, or the moves that I make now. And this particular book, Chasing Excellence by Ben Bergeron, I'm sure. Sorry. Originally read it in 2018. I flip through it often, and basically, Ben is a CrossFit trainer, and he teaches some of the world's most elite athletes, or trains them, coaches them. And so he's read a lot of the same books that you and I probably have, because you can see a lot of his methodologies and his strategies. You can see how that stuff plays out in his world, which is coaching. So it's stuff that in stories, he retells the same kind of self-help development stories that you've read in quite a few other books. It's just his slant is always towards training, which is really interesting. Don't make excuses, work harder, like all of that kind of stuff. But there's something that, I read a news article this morning on this idea of post-traumatic growth. And then as I'm flipping through this Chasing Excellence book by Ben, he talks about this idea of adversarial growth. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a classic example of the way successful people use adversity to grow and thrive. This is perhaps no better sample size of successful people than the 80 fittest men and women in the CrossFit Games. That's how it used to be set up. But anyway, so this idea of adversarial growth, basically, when you fail, when something doesn't go your way, there's a lot of ways you can respond to it. And the response is always in your head. How are you going to approach that failure? No matter the size, failure is failure. It doesn't matter if it's a small, like little split test that doesn't go your way, or it is, a $10,000 campaign, that a radio ad that didn't produce any results. I mean, all of those things are relative, so failure is a failure. What you do because of that failure is what makes all the difference in the world. So there are no failures. There's really just learning, so you're learning a better way to do something. And that's what this adversarial growth is all about. Now, we have made plenty of mistakes. We've launched products that haven't gone well. We have, had offers. We've had products that have gone really, really well, and made hundreds of thousands, $500,000 on them, and then they basically imploded. So there's lots of different sides, lots of different sizes, I should say, to the failures that we've had. But out of each and every one of those failures has come some sort of growth. So, when we used to do a lot of affiliate marketing, we basically kind of had a huge failure, and then I turned around and started giving away, just building tutorials and doing a lot of products and doing like that kind of thing. And that has worked out really well. Basically open sourcing a lot of SEO strategies and stuff that, we used, and we were able to build and grow a pretty big email list, that way. And it worked out nicely for the future of what we did. There was times when we did affiliate launches and it didn't work out so good. There was, we had entire websites that were built, generating $20,000 and $30,000 a month, back when SEO was working really well. And those websites vanished because of a Google algorithm update. So all of those failures, quote unquote, some of them we brought on, some of them were brought on by Google, but they were all failures. we had to adjust business models or adjust the way we did business because of those failures. And it doesn't matter if somebody else was the reason for the failure, or you were the reason for the failure, or I was the reason for the failure. None of that matters, because the only thing to do is to move forward. It's to put a plan together and move forward and grow, understanding that that failure was put there for a reason. So in every time, so my friend Chris Daigle, who someday will probably be on this show, he talks about cycles, or he taught me about cycles a long time ago. I remember, like clear as day, we were, walking to the ferry in New York City, and he's telling me about cycles and how entrepreneurs, business owners, they have these cycles. I've talked about them on previous shows. But basically everybody has, everybody that he knew who was super successful had 4 or 5 cycles typically. And, it's like you cycle up and you're on top of the world, and then you cycle down, something breaks, something happens, something, whatever. And then, so you're constantly on this roller coaster ride, and it doesn't matter. Some of the cycles are really big, and some of them are really, some of the dips are really shallow, but you're still cycling at all times. Some people hedge their bets and they try to cycle multiple things. So I can't really draw it, but basically it's like, so they'll cycle a couple different business models. But on Tuesday, we talked about focus. You want to make sure to focus on, you want to make sure to have, to be focusing on one particular thing at a time, or make sure that you have people appointed to focus on your behalf, basically. But in this idea of cycling, you're gonna have ups and downs. Like right now, globally, there is a down. So there are some people who are doing extremely well. So a lot of our clients are doing extremely well. We are doing extremely well. A lot of our friends are doing extremely well because we're all digital. So there's a couple segments that are just absolutely fucking killing it right now, and anything digital is one. If it's bringing somebody online, doing something online, digitizing something, they're killing it. Zoom, there was a company that I was looking at back in February called Fastly. It's a CDN company that is absolutely crushing it. They're up, I think, 220% from where they were in February. They're kind of like the new stock darling, like they've outpaced Zoom. So anything digital is doing really, really, really well. Same with, I think home stuff, furniture, office equipment, like all of that stuff, is doing really, really well. But then there's so many segments that aren't, so globally we're in this trough, or a lot of industries are in this trough, and they've cycled, so you can see cycles wherever. What happens because of being in that cycle, that adversarial growth, you're going to see entire business models change. Like I was just reading an article that curbside pickup is not going anywhere. So despite, it, even if we, everything goes green and COVID disappears, curbside pickup is still going to be around because people like it. People enjoy it. Takeout orders still going to be around because people like it. People enjoy it. So those things I don't think are ever going to leave. I don't think we're ever going to see people get back to the office buildings the way they were. Now the businesses know that their people can work from home. They're just going to rely on it. Not everybody, but a good number of them. So there's always adversarial growth. There's always post-traumatic growth. When you go through a trauma-filled event, there's always going to be, there's going to be growth out of that wreckage. Whether it's in your business, like the microcosm of your business, or whether it's globally whole. Now, I have gotten really interested, I think, a lot about where things, how basically like those small failures, like what can you do differently? How can it translate into something bigger? How can you learn from it? How can you understand and accept like the flow of what's going on? Because there's always flow, so there's always like inputs and outputs. So going to school for programming, understanding software, I'm very process based, so, and I just always have been. I'm very process based. So there's always inputs and outputs. Like we actually live on 60 Mile Creek is right behind our house. We have a creek that runs through. One of my favorite things about it is just the flow, like the representation of flow at this house. I mean, you sit in the back deck, you look at the flow, like literally you're looking at a river creek flow. But in the last like 6 months or last year, I've been very interested in this idea of flow, inputs and outputs, whether it's ideas, whether it's people, whether it's, just comments, whether it's money, whether it's whatever, this idea of flow. Now, flow is happening all around us, whether we choose to partake in it or not. So you're always in the middle of a stream of ideas, of money, of people, of thoughts, of, whatever. You're always in the middle of the stream. Whether you choose to tap into it or not is up to you. And I know some of my biggest failures have been because I have chosen not to tap into the stream. So I have kind of shut myself down out from what was going on. And it was always voluntarily. It was me just kind of shutting myself down. You know what I mean? Like, so for a really, really long time, didn't do too much with social media. Not that I think social media is, the end all be all or anything, but, I chose not to participate in the conversation. And I thought that was a good idea. And it wasn't, so, and it wasn't, just being visible, being seen, all of that stuff. Even doing these dailies, like these daily shows have been just such a night and day difference in terms of even old friends that I've been able to connect with, and people that, now we're just connecting on a different level because, it hasn't been 20 years since they've heard from me. It was just yesterday, and it wasn't just, like a conversation, you know what I mean? So, but I chose not to participate in the flow. So, in understanding that everything, no matter what happens, no matter what failure happens, no matter what happens to you or your business, you can grow out of it. And in growing, you can put together a plan that is going to help you get through it and help you get through it better. What is included in that plan is up to you. Like personally, like my plan for 2020 was to have one conversation a day from somebody outside of my circle. And the quickest way for me to do that, not even the quickest way, but, one way for me to do that was to just post one thing a day socially, so that was kind of where I started like not coming out of my shell, but kind of, attempting to engage in this flow. And it was posting one thing a day. And I didn't want it to be like something from me. So because I was I still am a chicken shit, but now I just embrace the fact that, I'm going to be doing these videos, and like this week in particular has been very, very vulnerable stuff. But anyway, so I just started sharing articles, in like January, February. And then those articles turned into some people likes, some people liked my stuff. And then that turned into a couple conversations, and the conversations, turned into something that more frequently happened. And then we started doing the dailies, and, so my engaging in flow are these, and they open up different conversations. I'm able to participate in different ideas, in different, kind of businesses and business models and thoughts and strategies and all that other stuff. So I wouldn't have engaged in this flow if it wasn't for, failures in the past, failures last year, things not going quite the way that I wanted them to go, so that's kind of really, that's just where I wanted to go today. Just from I wanted to start the conversation on the flow. It's something I've been interested in quite a bit. Start the idea of post-traumatic growth, adversarial growth. Hopefully you got something out of it, so, I mean, if I was to put together like kind of a little action plan, because, I'm pretty procedural. When you recognize that you're failing in something, figure out why and figure out what you can do, to pivot. Figure out what, 2, 3, 4 things you need to do to pivot out of that failure. And then take action on the first one. And if it is a consistent thing, schedule something every day, just make it a point to have one conversation a day outside of your You need to change something, so if you're failing, there's a reason why you're failing. So change something. Doesn't have to be, anything huge. Doesn't have to be momentous. It just needs to be something. It needs to be something that you can do differently, that may lead. If on the small side, it is just it's a pattern interrupt for your life. You're doing something a little tiny bit different every single day, so that you start to think about things differently. You start to see the world differently. On the big side, though, that small thing that you do differently could open you up to so many more possibilities, and it should. Like if you do something different, starting today, starting tomorrow, and just interject a small, tiny little habit in your life, then you're going to have an outsized, result from that small habit within a very short amount of time. I couldn't have told you when I decided to start waking up earlier that, I would have read about 80 books, since last October, read or listened to. I couldn't have told you that. I couldn't have told you that, my 15-minute workouts would have, went to 45 and 60-minute workouts. All of that stuff was a result of waking up earlier. So that's my message for today. Tomorrow, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Something different. And my wife is probably going to find me, hanging out in the library trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about 3 minutes before the call too. So if you need anything, let me know. Go to dumpfree.com and I'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks.